From WBBZ TV Sports, it's time to beat the champ. Now, here are your hosts, Paul Peck and Sue Novoitsky.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm Paul Peck, along with Hall of Fame bowler Sue Novoitsky, and welcome to this special edition of Beat the Champ. We have had a lot of fun over the last 5 years, taking this sport to another level, seeing all the outstanding bowlers in Western New York, and seeing the reaction from the bowling community has been great as well.
Absolutely. There's so many great bowlers in this community that don't do this for a living, but still come out here and perform on the weekends as if they do it for a living. And, you know, and as far as the community goes, I get so much input from everyone, and we have seen so many great matches throughout the years that it's fun to actually look back and see a couple of them from time to time.
All right, so here we go. It's the best of Beat the Champ. It's Hodgson versus Brick to get us started here, week 2 at Alley Brandt Lanes. Dave Hodgson making his debut here on Beat the Champ. But as you pointed out, Sue, Dave's a guy that is well known in the bowling circles here in Western New York.
Yeah, we bowled Travel League years ago. He's been around for a long time, and for those of you who haven't seen him for a while, it's half the guy he used to be.
There's a little less of him to see, which is great.
Absolutely.
55 years old from Alden, employed in IT at Perry's Ice Cream. And again, first time we're getting him here on the show, and that's not exactly the way that Dave would have wanted to have started it. So he'll have to fight off that start in the first frame, and got to know that he's going up against Pat Brick as well, too. Is going to have to bring out the best in you and everyone else.
I'll tell you, all the years that I've known Pat and bowled with or against him, whatever the case might be, I didn't know he had a thing about letting the other person finish. I mean, I guess that does play a part. Some people just like to have the ball in their hand, and some people like to post up their score. And I always thought it was because of lane 34, but it wasn't.
Well, there you go. Did you know that, Brian Borowski?
I did not know that.
There you go. Brian Borowski, the proprietor here at Alley Brandt Lanes, and a key member of the National Bowling Proprietors Association as their treasurer, joins us for this match. Talk a little bit about trophies and vintage gear and auto racing and Alley Brandt Lanes and everything else. So got a lot to touch on here, don't we?
Man, where do we start?
I don't know. You're the special guest. You tell us where you want to start as we watch Pat Brick struggling a little bit on his start as well, too. So let's start with trophies.
Trophy.
Look at that. Look at that trophy that you brought home from Las Vegas.
Is that a junior award? Or?
No, that is a... that is a trophy.
That was a shot, wasn't it, Sue?
Yeah, thank you. My partner and I, Joe Sagasta, we won the doubles tournament. It's the Extravaganza tournament. It's a fundraiser for the Bowling Hall of Fame Museum. It's a very unique tournament. It's an 8-game tournament. Each frame is just one ball, and where strikes are bad.
Strikes are bad.
So
got that?
So you won a tournament where strikes are bad.
That's correct.
Okay.
You know, it's like one game will be even. You have to get even in order to get points. Odd. Another one was AC-Deucey, where your partner had to throw the first 2 balls, and your goal was to get a score in between that score in order to get points. It's the funnest tournament you ever bowl in.
That is a really
sounds like
cool
a lot
idea.
of fun.
And the only time that strike was good was they took out the 1 and the 5 pin, and you had to try to get a strike.
So it's kind of like the concept of that 40-frame game where it's all about different things that has nothing to do with scoring.
Exactly, and again, strikes are bad, and a lot of people are trying to get strikes, and it's 0. Sorry.
I think this is something we should think about for one of our 4th shows down the road. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, again, it's a big fundraiser for the Bowling Hall of Fame Museum. We raised over $72,000 for that, and it's just a fun event. We had over 100 teams participate. It's just so much fun.
And this took place in
Las Vegas at the Red Rock Casino.
And they got that many teams. Is that locally supported as well, or was this with Bowl Expo?
It's more national. It's not really Bowl Expo, but you know, we have a lot of proprietors that want to raise funds for the Bowling Hall of Fame Museum, and it's just our max is 120 teams for that facility.
Wow. And was this in conjunction with Bowl Expo? Was it at the same time? So you had to go down another time?
Correct.
Oh,
so
boy,
what I do is I piggyback with the USBC. So I'll bowl the USBC, you know, 2 days, and then the weekend I'll bowl in that. So next year I already got a plan for Reno. I'll just leave a day early. It's always the weekend after Memorial Day.
Really? Because the Women Bowl in Las Vegas next year. So is the women participating in this as well?
It's anyone. You know, we have some people that don't bowl at all, and again, instead of doing a handicap format, we made it more of a fun format.
Nice.
You heard the great round of applause on the really cool spare pickup for Dave Hodgson there in the second frame. So you're not only being forced to travel to Las Vegas multiple times, but you've been doing a lot of other travel in your role as the national treasurer for the Bowling Proprietors Association. Where else cool have you been to?
Well, unfortunately, I have to be in Dallas 5 times between September and December.
All right, well.
So it's
that's a cool city. It might be a little steamy there when you're before you're done.
You know, unfortunately, it's a lot of work. So
yeah. Is that where the national office is based out of?
Right. We share a campus with USBC. That's where the National Bowling Hall of Fame Museum is, and that's where the training center is. So it's a nice little campus.
This feels like a good time to take a short break. We'll be right back with more action on Beat the Champ.
Instant Replay on Beat the Champ is brought to you by Transit Lanes and Keglers. Join us for bowling, food, and drinks.
Welcome back to Beat the Champ. Let's get back to the action here on WBBZ TV.
Just to catch you caught up here on the match here, Dave has struggled a bit, got a couple of open frames. Pat opened with an open, but he's had 3 strikes since then, and he seems to be kind of trying to find the right spot here on the lanes as well too. So, you know, and again, not unexpected with as good as bowler as Dave Hodgson is. First time on the show, we've always seen those guys sometimes take a little while to get warmed up.
I still wonder if it's a bit of an equipment issue, whether it's choosing the right ball for what's out there. But normally on the left-hand side, they don't see as much transition as they're going to see today because there's just more left-hander bowlers bowling than there is right-handers. So the transition that normally affects the right side more significantly is affecting the left side. So you're seeing these guys go through, you know, changes on the lane.
Yeah, again, as you pointed out, Sue, heavy on the lefties. 2 lefties in this match. We've got a lefty coming up in Jason Siliberto, so we had a couple lefties in the first match. So at the end of the first show, Mike Zarcone was telling us that he felt like Lane 34 was had a lot more oil than 33 does. Are you seeing that reflecting, and are you seeing the guys start to adapt to it, much like Dave just did there?
Well, it's real hard to tell the only right-hander we saw was Mike Zarcone, and he used 2 different balls, which you knew there was a reason he was using 2 different balls. But again, a ball with more surface can be used for 2 reasons. It can be used to get through the front of the lane, but it can also be used to tame down the back. So, you know, he explained that a little bit, what his thinking was in using that ball. But, he could have used a break right there.
Yeah, plus you also have to remember the lights, you know, are going to be more on 34 than on 33, so that could also decrease the oil. So there's a lot of different variables that
we don't talk probably as much about that, Brian, as we probably should. Explain a little bit more to everybody the effect that the lights can have on the lanes.
Well, when you have lights, you know, on oil, oil, can move around a lot faster when it's heated up a little bit. Again, anytime you affect the surface, whether it be light or people rolling the bowling ball, it will change the topography of the lane.
There's your updated Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard. This match getting a little bit tighter now as Dave is starting to find a little bit more of a groove, and we know Pat is a guy who tends to react best on the backside of things, as we saw in the win over Zarcone, and then you see right there a 7th frame strike.
Well, yeah, I said that he could have used that break on 33 because that really would have tightened the match up a lot more if he would have been able to trip out that 9 pin, but Bricky's got a 16-pin lead. I'm sorry, a 26-pin lead, and
that would have been
a better
60-pin lead if he would have struck.
Yeah.
So
and right now looking like a little better ball reaction, but it's not over yet. We've seen a lot of crazy things happen.
Yes, we have. Pat keeps doing that. He'll find a way to make that happen. So, Brian, you know, as you talked about, you know, you have as good a feel of it for anybody. Give everybody a state of the sport kind of thing, bowling as it is across this country now. We know how big it is, important it is in Western New York, but you see it on a national level.
Well, bowling is a lot different than it was in the 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s. It's a lot more family orientated. Leagues unfortunately have gone by the wayside, but they're continuing to build bowling centers, more FECs, which is family entertainment centers, that include bowling. You have your redemption games, the restaurants and stuff like that. So there is definitely an increase of bowling. Well,
one of the interesting things is that with the decrease in leagues, and even though I think that Western New York is still a strong league base, you might not be seeing that all over the country, but people are more likely to have a party in a bowling center. So sometimes there's better revenue in parties. I shouldn't say sometimes. Most of the time there's better revenue in parties. Less dependable and a little bit more work, but an opportunity for a little more revenue, because catering and having those events tend to be a little bit more beneficial than the cost of league bowling.
That's true. I mean, league bowling is still very important in our business, but we have to increase the avenues to get revenue in order to do upgrades within the bowling center. It's just different. I mean, bowling is still top participation sport in America. It's still a great business to be in.
Is because this is such a traditional league-based bowling area, is that sort of transition to the family side of it any slower here, or any more difficult here?
I wouldn't say that difficult. It's just different. I mean, it's your marketing efforts are a little bit different than they were back then, where you just supposed to sign, I need a team on a Thursday night, and get it right away. You just have to, market your bowling center a little bit different. There, oh wow, that fell just in time.
I think Pat had started to walk away and then just sort of glanced back over his shoulder to see if there was a chance, and that's about when it fell. So, big strike in the 10th frame for Pat Brick.
Well, it turns out that 7th frame was really important for Dave in closing and making this match a little bit tighter, because the spare here for Pat will, not even a spare, he just needs decent count to get this match.
So a good second half run by Dave Hodgson. We'll see whether he's got a chance or not. And
there's
that
a winner.
will put an end to it. So Pat Brick is going to come up with his 3rd consecutive victory, and he will continue to move on. Good performance on the debut here on the show by Dave Hodgson, and it is always good to hang out with the trophy man, Brian Borowski. Perfect replica there of your boyish face there. Very well done. So
maybe when I was like 15.
The proprietor here of Alley Brant Lanes, Brian Borowski, joining us to watch Pat Brick come up with another victory. We will get you ready for our second match of the day here at Alley Brant when Sue and I return to Lockport. More Beat the Champ right after this. 216 to 201, 3rd consecutive victory for Pat Brick, but a nice debut for Dave Hodgson. Sue wanted to know, what did you do to change things? Because you got off to a rough start, but you made a really nice push in the second half of the frames.
It's amazing how hot out it is with the heat, the lights. The lights didn't bother me, but the heat. So the left lane was just tighter, and I wasn't ready for it. I told Brick that if I'd have had 10 minutes of practice, I would have given him a better game.
Well, next time around, I'm sure he'll remember that, and I know you will as well, too.
Absolutely.
Brian?
A great bowling, Dave, and thanks for coming out supporting Beat the Champ.
Awesome.
All right. Not exactly the debut that Dave Hodgson wanted, but a good way to show off here. And we've got another debut guy coming up. Mike Phillips is the next bowler in line for Pat Brick. That match next. Pat Brick goes for 4 in a row. His opponent and the man who will try to prevent that from happening is Mike Phillips, making his debut here on Beat the Champ, 45 years old, from right here in Lockport. A regular bowler here in the leagues at Alley Brandt Lane, so we'll see how much of an advantage that can be for Mike Phillips against an outstanding bowler who has won 3 in a row in Pat Brick. So this is a good match. This has the potential to be really fun.
Well, like we talked about, there hasn't been as much transition on the right side as there has been on the left, because we've seen only Mike Zarcone, and Mike Zarcone definitely plays inside of where Mike is playing. You know, Mike likes to open up the lane, and he always, you rarely ever see him his ball hit right, set down right of the third arrow. I mean,
so it's a bit of an untouched area that Mike Phillips is going to operate in, because we've been so heavy with the lefties, including Pat Brick here. So a little unusual, you know. Generally, we don't get as many, but we've been very lefty heavy, and we'll get a lefty in our next match, in Jason Siliberto. So Pat Brick has, you know what Pat has done, kind of found ways to win here. You know, the scores have not been crazy high for him. 198, 224, 223 over 216 in the last one, and then it's always nice when you get a little lucky roll and falls and things like that.
Yeah, it looked like a solid shot off his hand, but it didn't roll up the way he would have liked and came a little bit light. Good pin action. Like you said, they're sliding around pretty good back there.
Yes, they are. We've seen that from the very first match. So
nice when they fall forward.
And again, I think I enjoy it, and I think you do too. Maybe the bowlers don't enjoy it, but when the lane conditions are a little bit more difficult, I think it makes for a lot better bowling. If all you care about are big scores, well, that's not necessarily going to be, and we haven't had that here today.
No, and then what's funny is we'll get a game.
Sliding pins there.
Yeah, we'll get a game where all of a sudden the scores will be super high, and which could be, if Pat gets through this match, which is yet to be seen, you might see with Jason and Pat as two really strong left-handed bowlers. But, you know, Mike's got his work cut out for him, because, like Mike Zarcone told us, 34 and 33 are very different on the right-hand side.
Much more oil on 34 is what Mike said he felt.
Right, and I watched him practice. I watched Mike here practice, and he was definitely having trouble getting to the pocket on 34, getting the ball to read. It's almost just like spraying right through the break point, and sometimes that is an out of bounds and you can't play it. It's yet to be determined, but we're going to watch him. He's way far right, and there's a chance that that's just a spot in the lane that's not going to go up. And that's when you get a real big challenge.
Good spare pickup there in the second frame for Mike Phillips. So spares to get things started for him. Employed as a fabricator at Valair Incorporated. I mentioned he's 45 years old. He's been bowling for 32 of those 45 years. 220 is the average for Mike Phillips. Bowls here at Alley Brandt in tournaments or in leagues on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then bowls in a league at the Rapids Bowling Center as well too, over Niagara Falls.
See, by all accounts, 33 rolls up just fine. So 34 is a challenge that's just not reading the lane. So where the break point is, there seems to be oil, and it's going to create havoc on that right side if you can't figure it out. Sometimes you have to do what you think is the opposite, and you think you got to keep moving right to get the ball to hook up, but what you really have to do is move left and look, because you're looking for friction. You're looking for the drier part of the lane, and it may not be to the right of you.
Yep, synthetic lanes here at Alley Brandt Lanes, and as we talked about in our first show, it's the Alley Brandt special on the oil pattern. It's a little heavier on the oil than maybe normal, so we've seen that play a big role and have a big impact on all of our bowling into show number 2, which is here today. So we also talked about in our first show, Pat Brick just newly inducted into the New York State Bowling Hall of Fame to go along with the Greater Buffalo USBC that he's already in, and I'm sure he's in Tonawanda and a whole bunch of other ones as well. Pat's a modest guy, so he didn't rattle all that off on his bio sheet. But I think we all know exactly how good he is, and one of the best guys in Western New York, and now up to 13 wins here on Beat the Champ, as this is now his 13th show. It's frame number 4 for Pat Brick.
Great shot.
That's one of his nicest of the day. So now Mike Phillips, who's got a good cheering section on hand here today.
Yeah,
his
Rockstar Phillips.
That's
Not
right.
to be confused with Rocket Rob.
That's right. That's his nickname, is Mike the Rockstar Phillips. And
Yeah.
he's got his sons Parker and Jacob here. He's got his parents, his girlfriend, her family all cheering him on here. And we're going to see his son Parker in 2 weeks on our 4th show here at Alley Brant Lanes. Matter of fact, it was Parker, who has been on Beat the Champ twice, that encouraged Dad to get out here and compete for the show and make the show. And there you go. There's the family. There's the rock star is in the house.
Well, that was a very rock star adjustment there on lane 34, because he did exactly what he probably should have done, and that's move left and use and find the dry to the left of him and not to the right of him. Good adjustment there.
Oh, and it's 3 in a row. Had to wait a minute to see whether that 7-pin was going to fall or not. But that's a 3-bagger for Mike Phillips, and really starting to put the heat now on Pat Brick.
Big adjustment there on lane 34. Just made this match pretty much tied up.
There's Janelle Sabin manning the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard, not writing left-handed as I requested earlier in the show. She refused that request for me. Trying to keep the southpaw spirit going here today.
Big shot.
And you can always count on Pat Brick when he needs a big shot, and he gets one in the 5th frame.
This looks like a good time to take a break. We'll be back with more Beat the Champ right after this. Welcome back to Beat the Champ.
So we are in a single pin match here, single digits in the margin between these two guys. This has been a good match as Mike Phillips in his debut has really pushed the great Pat Brick. Hope you had a chance to watch last week's show and see that epic match between Brick and Zarcone that came right down to the end, came literally an inch or so away from the messenger pin taking out the 10 and giving Mike Zarcone a strike that would have won it. Instead, he loses by a pin. One of the best matches we have ever had here on Beat the Champ.
Another great shot right there.
Right, not unexpected between two great bowlers like Zarcone and Brick.
And I'll tell you, I liked what Mike said when he said you always want the ball in your hand. You'd like to have a chance. You know, sometimes when the match looks like it's not going your way, you're kind of hoping just give me a chance to get up in the 10th and have a pop at it. And he threw it great. I mean, I don't think he would have any regrets on how he threw it. He actually got a little bit more on it, gave the ball a little room. And, you know, sometimes it's hard to carry.
Back-to-back spares for Pat Brick in 7 and 8. There's your updated scoreboard.
Well, Mike's really needs to come up here and post a double up and even up this match, because right now Pat's up 16, but we're running out of frames. So
this is the 8th frame for Mike Phillips. Got it right where he needed it in the pocket between the 1 and the 3, and it takes everything else down for a very big 8th frame strike.
He made a great adjustment on a lane that's not reading the ball very well, and he's made great shots on lane 34, and 33 is the lane that's actually ball's rolling up a little bit better, and that's the one he kind of goofed up on. It's like so disappointing when you miss the good lane, when you work so hard to hit that lane that's not as easy.
So let's see if Mike can pull the double off here in the 9th frame.
Good shot.
Just didn't turn quite as much as he wanted it to. Boy, those the ends of the lanes where that hook is so crucial to success. We've talked more about that the last 2 shows than we have in a long time.
Yep, he's pointing it a little bit with a little less surface. You see he's got a shiny ball in his hand as opposed to the dull surface balls we've seen a little bit more of. Okay, so
Pat Brick heads to the 9th frame.
Well, the best Mike can do is to strike out is 222. So Pat right now is looking at 227 if he just marks out. So he just needs to stay clean. That's a good one.
Beyond clean. That's a 9th frame strike for Pat Brick.
That's a good one to get right there.
Well, I tell you, I can't recall seeing so much pin action in the last couple of months of this show. I mean, there are pins slipping, sliding, flying, bouncing all over the place, and to the advantage of the bowlers, because those collisions have been the differences between strikes and spares.
Right, like even that 7 pin that Mike just left on lane 33 prior to this, you know, the pins have been swishing around so good. They've been getting a lot of those mixers, and in that case, that was a rough spot not to get it.
10th frame. And that's going to be a little bit of a challenge for Pat. 2, 4, 7, 10.
So Pat's confided in me. They had a little spell of opening in the 10th when in critical situations in the last week or so he's had about 4 different opportunities and they've all gone the same way, and it's almost gotten to the point where it's in his head now. But this is makeable. This one he can definitely slide.
Yep, not going to happen. So it's an open in the 10th. It's got to be in Pat's head a little bit, and it means a 213 on the board. So now Mike Phillips comes to the 10th frame with a chance to win.
Well, the good thing for Pat is that he's forcing Mike to double. I mean, Mike's been perfect on this lane since the first frame when he had to figure it out. But he still needs to post up a double because of the pin count. He needs 2.
Oh, and much like the scenario with the Zarcone match, needing the double and needing the strike, and that flying pin goes flying up and over the top. So incredible, the comparisons of those 2 scenarios.
It is. He made a great shot, and he actually got that one a little more high flush where the lighter hit is actually better carry. So can't be upset. He made a great shot.
So it's a victory, the 4th in a row for Pat Brick.
And that makes 4 wins in a row for Pat Brick, 213 to 210. Keep watching. We'll be back with more Beat the Champ.
Another narrow victory for Pat Brick means another narrow defeat and a frustrating one for the opponent, in this case Mike Phillips. So here you are, it's a tight match. Pat goes open in the 10th and you walk up to the line there. What are you thinking?
Just make a good shot, and I did. It just didn't carry. That's all.
It didn't carry, and it kind of flew over the top of the pin there. How frustrating is that?
Yeah, it's a little frustrating, but, you know, first time on, I'm happy.
Right. Well, you are a regular here at Alley Brandt. This is a place you feel comfortable at for your first time being on the show.
Oh, definitely.
Give me an assessment on how this went for you.
Oh, it was great. It was a lot of fun. I mean, the lanes were tough, but I had to make a few adjustments. I threw 2 different balls, 1 on each lane, and just made a bad shot in the 7th frame there.
So now it's up to your son Parker in 2 weeks to keep the Phillips name looking good here, right?
Yes.
We will see Mike's son Parker in 2 weeks on our Special Force show. Brian?
Congratulations, Mike. Thanks for bowling.
Thank you.
And I'll see what Parkin can do.
Yeah.
All right, Pat Brick keeps it going. Can he keep it going for another sweep of the week? got a pretty good opponent in Jason Siliberto. That match next. Oh, this one's going to be a good one. Pat Brick, who is on a roll, having won 4 in a row, taking on another high-level Western New York bowler, particularly here at Allie Brant Lanes, and that is Jason Siliberto. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the amazing things we have seen from Jason on this show in this bowling center before. But Jason will start things off here. So this one's going to, much like last week's show ended with Brick versus Zarcone, this figures to be just as good.
And there he goes.
Yes, Jason Siliberto starting with.
He's got the last 13 again.
See, Pat's got the stats down pat here, doesn't he?
Well, he shot 300 against him, that's why.
That's right. Well, that's exactly what we're talking about. The last time these two guys squared off on this show here was a year ago, and it was Siliberto throwing a 300 game against Pat Brick. So Pat clearly remembers. I'm sure Jason does too.
Oh.
So Pat has won 4 in a row, as we talked about, not in dominant fashion, not dominant scores. The lane conditions have as much to do with that as anything. But in some ways, when he's needed to make the key shot at the key time to give himself the chance to win by 1, 2, 3, or 4 pins, he does. And he's got a couple lucky breaks as well, too. Like you always need to do.
He's put the ball in the pocket probably more than anybody else. I mean, he's been pretty solid getting the ball in the pocket. But he's still got that. He turned around just as soon as that match was over and he goes, guess what I did in the 10th? It's like, oh, he's got to get that out of his head. So somewhere before today is over, we've got to get a good 10th frame out of Pat.
Very lucky that he survived an open in the 10th frame to still beat Mike Phillips. But let's say that's the only time it's happened here so far.
No, the first game it happened too. But
he did, didn't it? You are right about that, yes. All right, good strike in the second for Pat Brick. So here's Jason Siliberto from Gasport, 38 years old. Operations associate at M&T Bank, but beyond that, making his 8th appearance here on Beat the Champ, an overall record of 10 wins and 5 losses. And once again, the last time we saw him on the show was a year ago here. He won 7 in a row here at Allie Brant Lanes, all 7 wins here, and that included the 300-game victory over Pat Brick.
Well,
so not only did he respond to the challenge of bowling against Pat Brick, he threw a 300 against him.
Right. Well, not this time.
No, not this time.
Nope. His streak ended at 13.
One of 5 300 games that we have had here on Beat the Champ. Remember, it took us a while to get one. It took us into our 3rd year almost to get one from Mike D'Amico, who had the first, and Paul Geiger, Jason, Brandon Stewart, and Chuck Jagosinski are the other guys who have had perfect games here on TV. And that's a bit of a crucial mistake there for Jason, missing the 2-pin spare, so it's open in the second for Jason.
Very, very different styles, these two, even though they're left-handed and very successful. Their styles are very different. Jason, you will see him more often than not playing very direct to the pocket and almost pointing it. That seems to be his game. His swing goes away a little bit. And he's perfected it, but he is almost always in that direction. And Pat has more roll.
All right, so the 52-year-old Pat Brick from Buffalo. Pharmacy technician is the profession for Pat, but great bowler is the second line and all that. Hall of Fame bowler, numerous halls of fame.
And I know Pat gets a lot of support from his family. His wife Angela is a bowler herself, and Madison we've seen a couple of times.
Daughter Maddie.
They're busy with her, and I know that Angela has been super supportive of Pat's bowling because he loves to do it, and
bowls a lot of tournaments, bowls all over the East Coast, all over New York State, correct?
Yeah, he didn't get to the New York State Hall of Fame by sending in his scores. You know, he's put a lot of work in.
Yeah. Yet we still see him on our show pretty regularly, which is fun. This is his 12th appearance on the show, so even though he's busy a lot of weekends, when he decides to qualify, he usually makes our show and usually wins some matches on our show. That's a 3-bagger for Pat, 3 in a row.
The action will continue on Beat the Champ in just a minute.
Instant Replay on Beat the Champ is brought to you by Transit Lanes and Keglers. Join us for bowling, food, and drinks.
Welcome back to Beat the Champ.
Gary Kenyon, Dan Streer, and the aforementioned Rocket Rob Piccoli are the 3 bowlers waiting to take part in next week's show to see who maybe one of these 2 guys, or who else. Maybe it's Gary Kenyon wins that first match.
25 pins separating them 2-0. Pat can go up 35 here with the strike, though. This is a big ball.
7th frame.
Oh.
A little slow motion, but doesn't matter. They all fell.
I know. We talked about this a little earlier, how Pat's a perfectionist, and he is not a fan of the break, you know, and he's got to take them. Sometimes they fly away.
They're not all going to look great.
He's been leaving 7 pins all over the place on lane 34.
Yep.
Well, it owes him.
So that's a big double for Pat Brick in 6 and 7.
Put him up 35 pins.
That's 3 in a row.
Still, this lane 34 is definitely a challenge. Just tighter. It's tighter in the front of the lane, and that's
what our man Mike Larcone told us. He knew it right away. Have you seen? I mean, Mike was using different balls on the 2 lanes. Have you seen anybody else do that?
The second Mike didn't, in the conversation, Mike Phillips, did he say he was using 2 different balls?
He did not, but but if you noticed it,
I didn't think he did. I thought I heard him say it too. Big shot there for Jason.
Yep, again, nice. The sliding pins have been huge all day long. That took out about 3 other ones there. So that's 2 in a row for Siliberto as he moves to the 9th frame.
Yep, that 35 pins is big. He's pretty much got to throw them all now to give himself a chance.
Yeah, guys are starting to strike a lot more, particularly in this match. Now, maybe that's just because these are 2 of the best guys in town.
Yeah. You knew this was going to be a good matchup. Ball change.
You noticed that, huh?
That's black ball.
3 in a row for Jason Siliberto. Doing everything he needs to do to put the heat on Pat Brick.
234 is Jason's max.
It's just a 5-pin advantage right now for Pat Brick, but he's coming off the 3 strikes.
No, it's actually 35 pins.
Oh, correct. You're right. I'm looking at that scoreboard, which is the last place I should be looking at.
Wow. Again, that's 7 pin.
I think you heard Pat summarize things.
That's huge.
Yeah, I joked that we had struck oil here in Lockport. I think it's a gusher over there on lane 34.
Okay, great spare.
Yeah, okay. Pat's not happy. A little muttering to himself there.
He's got to clear his thought process right now and not be thinking about anything other than making a shot.
Can't do what he's got in his head right now, which is those open in the 10th. Done it twice in 2 weeks.
I think he'll be just fine on this one.
So will Pat Brick do what he needs to do to get a 5th win in a row, a sweep of the week, and advance to next week's show? tell you, it's clearly in his head.
Pat, it is in his head.
Look at what is left here. 5 pins.
He can make this though. He can give this one a go. This will slide. But even if he makes it, he cannot shut Jason out.
And he gets only 2 of the 5. So for the second consecutive match, Pat Brick ends with an open, and the 220 score goes on the board, and now we'll find out if it's enough or not. It was last time, and it was last week. Tenth frame, Jason Siliberto. Got it,
Great
4th
shot.
in a row. And look at that scoreboard. Look what we are headed down the stretch to, right as we figured. 2 great bowlers in another great match coming right down to the last rolls.
He needs this one.
Oh.
Let me see what this adds up to be. That's what he needed. He can go 223. That's enough. 222, even if he misses. Jason has won.
So Jason Siliberto, despite a little frustration with the 7-pin, is going to get what he needs.
All right.
And it's a victory for Jason Siliberto by 3 pins over Pat Brick to end Pat's winning streak and maybe start another one for a guy that we know knows how to do that. Terrific match once again to end another week here at Alley Brandt. We'll talk to both guys and wrap up a fun week and get you ready for next week when Sue and I return. More Beat the Champ from Lockport right after this. Last week we had an epic final match that wound up in a 1-pin win for Pat Brick over Mike Zarcone. Another epic that doesn't go your way, a 3-pin win for Jason. Take me through those again. The struggles you're having at the end of your matches, Pat. Where's that coming from?
It's just a mental thing. It happens. Obviously, I got to work through it, but I mean, I've been bowling forever, so there's no reason. It's totally in my head. It's just a matter of getting up there and making better shots when I have to. He bowled good. He deserved to win.
Well, beyond that match, a good run of 4 in a row. Give everybody a sense of how these lanes are performing, how you were able to kind of figure them out a bit.
Yeah, they were a little tighter than qualifying last week, but that's fine. That's just part of bowling. You're not always going to bowl on the exact same thing, and you just got to make the right adjustments.
Right.
And luckily, it panned out for me, at least for a few games. So
eventually, you're going to beat this guy on this show.
Sooner
at some
or later,
point.
he beats me a lot.
Brian,
Congratulations, great bowling last 2 weeks.
Thanks, man.
Sue?
Jason, great match as usual here at this house, but you switched balls late in the game. That's unusual, and you're only in a got 1 game match. So what made you do that?
Oh well, I knew I needed to strike, so had to find something. Wanted to get it a little farther down the lane, and it's a little that ball's a little snappier. So
Well, that's a veteran move because it takes a lot of guts to do that late in a match like that.
yeah. Yeah. Well,
It worked.
I guess that's what I'm supposed to do, right?
That's right. That's why you have all those titles on your resume. But great bowling, and we'll see you next week here.
All right. Thank you.
All right, another fun match. Boy, we've had such great matches here through the first 2 weeks here at Alley Brandt Lanes. Jason's going to do his best to provide us with some more for next week. Sue and I will preview our next week's set of opponents and competition when we return to wrap things up here at Alley Brandt Lanes in Lockport. You know, I love the fact that when we see that lineup of bowlers, even before we get started, and you're like, boy, if that guy goes against that guy, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. That's exactly what's happened through the first 2 weeks here.
That's right. We wanted to see that epic match between Jason and Pat, not at anybody's expense, and there was a lot of bowling to get to that match, but it did get there because they were the two best bowlers on the show, and it was a great match. Yeah, and again, it had its ups and downs. Pat Brick bowled great over the last 4 matches, but we know how good Jason is, and now we'll see whether he gets another winning streak started. Right, and it's how mental this game is, too. I mean, we're talking about the physical, we're talking about the lane conditions, we're talking about the moves they're making and the oil and where it's going, but a lot of mental going into this game, which, you know, we saw play out there for Pat. I love the answer to your question about making the ball change. He goes, well, that's what I'm supposed to do, right? It's not that easy, though.
Supposed to do, right? So we got some great bowlers coming up for next week, and that'll challenge Jason, including legends like Gary Kinyon, and we've got Rocket Rob Piccoli and Dan Streer. Going to be fun again next week.
Yeah, it will be, and it'll be fun to see how some of those veterans will come up to the plate with making those adjustments to see what goes on. All right, well, if you needed any better reason to make sure you're with us next week, Janelle just gave it to you. Make sure you join us another week at Alley Brandt Lanes in Lockport. We'll see you next week on Beat the Champ.